Okay, this is what we're gonna do, Nana. I'm gonna stand here and hold the camera and interview you about your life, and there's ground rules. The ground rules are no matter what your true thoughts are, opinions, memories, that you just be true. Don't try to whitewash them or sugarcoat them. Make them real. Um, what I really wanted to do was start really at the beginning. I wanted to ask you what your first memory from your childhood is.
Walking 5 miles to school on a dirt road to go to from the first grade to the 7th grade.
And that was in where? Hazard?
That was in Haddocks, Kentucky.
Haddocks.
That's between Hazard and Jackson.
And do you remember the name of the school?
It was the Haddocks School,
And
primary school.
your brother, how many of your brothers and sisters went to that same school? How many did you walk with every day?
Well, let's see. 5. Well, including myself, was 5 of us.
Yeah. And your mom's, what was your mom's name?
Rachel Bellamy.
That's her maiden name, right?
That's her maiden name.
And your dad?
My dad was William Price Spicer.
What do you remember about them as far as their marriage? What was their marriage like?
Well, Dad and Mom, which was Rachel and William, had a wonderful marriage. And then Mom died at age 45.
And you were how old?
And I was 13 years old and left 7 kids at home for Dad to take care of.
How long was it before he remarried?
2 years. And that didn't last, no time.
Who was that, do you know?
I'll have to think a minute. I can't think of her
That's all right.
name.
So they got divorced?
Yeah, right away, because she was too lazy to take care of the kids, help take care of
Yeah.
the kids. The oldest one was 15 and the youngest one was 2 years old.
Did he remarry again after that?
Yeah, he did. He married second time. Her name was Liza Jane. And she had 4 boys and a girl. But the girl was the only one that was young enough to come and live with us. The others lived in Michigan and had their own lives. So that lasted until Dad died.
And what did he die from?
His lungs were bad from smoking so much.
What did your mom die from?
She had a cerebral hemorrhage, a brain hemorrhage.
What's your favorite memory of your mom?
Oh, she was so gentle. Never heard her say a bad word in my life. And she was such a good Christian. And she really loved her children. And she worked herself to death with 7 kids. Did all the washing and everything herself until the girls got old enough to help.
Did you know she was going to die? Was it
The
sudden?
night before she died, she and I went to the restroom, which was outside, and she said, "Now, honey, I want to tell you something." She said, "I'm not going to be with you very long. I'm going to be dying." And I thought, well, she just thinks it's because she had horrible, horrible headaches. I guess that was because she had something in her brain that caused the hemorrhage. So she got sick that night with she called it a sick headache. She would be so sick she couldn't walk around and be so sick at her stomach. So she walked the floor that night until about 5 o'clock in the morning. And of course Dad was staying right with her. You know, he was sitting on the bed. He didn't want to be alone. So about 8 o'clock, I guess it was the next morning, Dad told my brother, Paul, which was, I think he was 19, to go get her sisters and brothers in there as quick as he could. So
And now Paul's your brother who also, he
got
died.
killed in Middletown, Paul did, in a car wreck.
And he was how old?
He was 20 years old. Went to
Wow.
Middletown, got a job on the railroad. He was thrilled to death. Now this was in 42, 1942, I believe it was, or 3. So he got a job in Middletown on the railroad and was living with Dad's cousin. And he just was so thrilled. So the boys, I can't remember the aunt's name that he lived with in Middletown, but she had 2 boys that was teenagers, and they had a car. So they went out one night, on a Saturday night. Of course, Paul never drank a beer in his life until he went to Middletown and got with these boys that drink beer. So he, being, he wanted to be sociable with them, and he started drinking beer too. Well, they went out in this old car on a Saturday night. So he had, I guess, a beer or two, and then he decided he wanted to drive. So they said, now, we never hardly believed that, but they let him drive. Well, he drove about a mile and came to I think you called them a culvert or something like this. Concrete on either side of it, and it's just enough for one car to go through at a time.
Okay.
So he panicked. They said, because another car was coming, and he thought he didn't, I guess, wasn't knowledgeable enough to step on the brake. So he veered to the right and went over into a creek underneath this culvert, and it broke his neck. His neck was broken. He had a big blue knot on his forehead.
Now, was your mom still alive then?
No, thank God she wasn't alive, because that was her favorite, was the oldest son.
What about?
So then,
Go ahead.
2 years later, then Mom, after Paul died, got sick.
Well, you just said your mom wasn't alive when Paul died.
No, she wasn't. So how am I doing this? No, Mom got sick when Paul was in where did I say he went to work at? Middletown. Lived with an aunt. So Paul was there working, so Dad called him in real fast, so he came on in. When the doctor from Jackson finally came and said there's no hope.
Right.
So then.
Okay, so.
So then she died the next morning.
Now, how was your dad after Paul died?
Oh, he was a basket case. In 2 years' time, his loved ones, his dearly beloved wife that had been married for, I think they'd been married like 25 years, 20-some years, because the oldest one was 20. And then the next daughter, oldest daughter, was 15. So then after Mom died, Dad threw the burden of cooking for 7 people on this 17-year-old daughter.
Okay.
Which
was who?
Clara.
Clara
was the oldest, Clara Spicer. And then Cora and Ora were next, the twins, which I'm Ora.
Right.
And we all had to pitch in. She would get up in the morning and try and do just what Mom did, make a big pan of biscuits, and Cora and I would be making the gravy and frying the bacon. We always had a butchered hog and always had plenty of meat. So we...
So you never, even during the Depression, how was it during the Depression?
Now, I don't remember the Depression. See, the Depression was in 27. Oh, the Depression was in...
I thought it was like 36, but I could be wrong. Don't go by me.
He'd been in 30, and Cora and I was born in 1927. I know he was like 3 years old.
Okay.
And then
so you don't remember anything about the Depression?
Don't remember one thing about
You don't
the
remember
Depression.
being tough times? You don't remember not having food to eat?
Dad was in World War I. And he never saw battle, but he got injured somehow. He lost his eyesight. And they blamed it on being in the service and being so stressed. But I'm sure that wasn't what it was, because I have the same thing that Dad had.
Right.
Exactly the same thing. But then he drew like $325, I believe it was, a month.
Oh, okay.
Well, Lord have mercy. He'd go to Jackson, take a wagon, and go down to Haddocks in between Jackson and Hazard, and fill that wagon up when he got his $325 with flour, 100 pounds of flour, 100 pounds of cornmeal, and bacon galore. Bacon by the big strips. And of course, we had hams and things hanging in our. It was like I don't remember what they called it, but it was a big house.
Like a smokehouse.
Yeah, it was a smokehouse. That's what it was called. So we kept hams and things like that hanging in there, and Mom would make sauerkraut and put it in there, and we had just plenty to eat. People thought we were rich, and here there was 8 or 9 of us.
How, growing up, who do you think was your favorite brother or sister?
Oh, my twin sister, no doubt about it.
Closest.
And then the oldest brother, Paul. Jim was the next oldest brother. He teased us all the time, and he'd get us down on the big front porch. In the summertime, we all went barefooted and twist our toes till we would scream, and he would just die laughing. And it was really painful, but he thought it was the funniest thing that ever was in this world. And he was the one that got killed in Middletown.
Now, did that change? I mean, did the closest brother or sister change during different points of your life, or was it always Cora as the one you were closest
to? Oh, it was
to?
always my twin sister.
Yeah.
Because, we were twins. Yeah.
But now you seem to have a real affection for Helen.
That was the baby girl. See, we took care of her. Then after Mom died, she was 2 years old when Mom died.
Uh-huh.
Well, she was just a baby doll to the rest of us.
Yeah.
And we just took care of her. Well, then when I got married and to Mervyn Smith, and I went to, left Hards Creek and went to, we actually went to Hillsboro, Ohio, and lived with my dad. He had moved there from Jackson. He wanted to try to let us better ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So we moved in with him as a newly married couple, and of course right away I got pregnant with Sherry,
Right.
my oldest. And
Let me ask you a question. I want to sort of slow down on that part. Did you date anybody before Mervyn?
Oh, I dated a little bit in high school, but
Do you remember your first meeting of Mervyn?
Oh yeah.
Where'd you meet him?
He, me and my sisters had gone to Jackson, Kentucky, with a taxi. A taxi took us there from Haddix to go to a movie.
Okay.
So we went to the movie. So then, when the movie was over, it was still light.
Do you remember the name of the movie?
Summertime.
That's really a hard one, huh?
Oh, that's very hard. Yeah, I don't remember.
Okay,
now.
so you went to a
I knew
movie.
it was a cowboy movie.
Okay.
That's all I remember. So then, when it was over, and we watched the cartoons in this, then we left the theater and was walking around in Jackson. Just walking around, seeing what we could see, So we passed this little beer joint. And of course, Mervyn was sitting in there on a stool, and he saw us pass by. So he came to the door and yelled for us to come in, and we said, we're not allowed to go in bars. We can't go in there. He said, oh, just come in and I'll buy you a Coke. Well, that, we didn't have money for a Coke, so that was really enticing.
Right.
So we went, he came out and just escorted us in and set us down at the table where he was sitting. Well, we thought that was, the berries. So, and I thought sure he was going to like my older sister, and
Cora.
Clara.
I'm sorry, Clara. Yeah.
Clara. And I was so afraid he's going to like her. So I really kind of strutted my stuff, So then, when we got ready to leave there, we was going to go and get a taxi and go back to Jackson. So it started pouring, absolutely pouring, the rain. And he said, well, if you girls will stay in the hotel, I'll pay for a night's stay, and then tomorrow will probably be nice. Well, of course, Clara being the oldest, and being the mother over us, she wouldn't have anything to do with that.
Right.
And he said, I'm not going to stay there. I'm going to go to my sister's here in Jackson. So then, sure enough, that's what happened. We stayed in the hotel, and we thought that was the cat's meow,
Right.
to have a room with a shower and all this stuff, So that's kind of how it started, and that was on a Saturday night. So I told him where I was living. I was living with a friend in Haddix.
How old were you? 18?
I must have been about 17 and a half, and was going to high school. And he would come. he said, well, if it's all right, I'd like to come up there and see you. So I thought, well, that's okay with me. And I didn't even ask the people where I was living if it's okay, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So he came up there and we'd sit and swing out on the front porch and just swing. Well, one night he stayed until 12 o'clock. And boy, did I catch heck from the lady of where I was living.
You were like in a boarding house?
No, it wasn't a boarding house at all. It was a private home. Yeah.
And why were you staying there?
Because Dad lived on Howard's Creek, which is way up a creek. We called it a holler.
Okay.
And it just wasn't feasible. I couldn't have gotten from there to... See, we was going in Jackson to Breathitt County College.